It's official. U.S. President Joe Biden has approved an executive order to impose sanctions on the leaders of Myanmar's coup. The measures will be focused on military leaders, their family members, and businesses that are linked to them. And steps are also being taken to block the military from accessing $1 billion worth of government funds that are currently being held in the U.S. Now, these sanctions come just a day after a woman was shot in the head by police during widespread protests against the military's takeover of Myanmar's democratically elected leadership. Tens of thousands have turned out in the streets to stand up against the coup, and the military has violently responded. You can see it right here. Well, we have Gregory Poling joining us. He's a senior fellow for Southeast Asia at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. So first of all, break down what these U.S. sanctions will actually look like for Myanmar. What is the U.S. demanding here?
Later this week, we'll get a list, presumably of specific generals in Myanmar, family members, and probably the two big military companies in Myanmar. They won't be able to invest in the U.S. They won't be able to access bank accounts. They won't be able to travel to the U.S. I don't think that's going to mean a whole lot to the generals. They don't intend to move to the U.S. anyway. It could bite with their families. A lot of these generals have handed out some cushy contracts to their kids over the years. And it could certainly demonize the Burmese military-linked companies, which, even though they don't do a lot of business with the U.S., it'll make it awfully tough for them to do business with anybody else.
Now, at this point, the Burmese people don't really seem to be slowing down in their protests against the military. What is the latest that's been happening on the streets at this point?
So today is the 6th day of running protests across almost every city and township in Myanmar, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands in the big cities, Yangon and Mandalay and Naypyidaw. So far, the military has not used overt crushing force. They've left the police in charge. The police have mostly used bullying and coercion and water cannons, although they did use live fire 2 days ago and struck a woman who is likely to die. It could get a lot worse, and historically in Myanmar, it has gotten a lot worse. So everybody is holding their breath.
Could we see the military actually step back and release Myanmar's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi?
It seems unlikely, but it's certainly what the people are demanding. One of the things, anyway, that people are demanding, and what these sanctions from the U.S. and likely sanctions from the U.K. and other European states will be demanding. But Min Aung Hlaing, the senior general who's taken power, has a very antagonistic relationship with Aung San Suu Kyi, and it seems likely that that is going to be the thing above all that he doesn't want to do.
Well, you know, obviously this is all happening amidst the coronavirus pandemic. We're not talking about it, but the country's certainly dealing with it. What is the economic situation right now in Myanmar? And could U.S. sanctions devastate the people, especially if, you know, the military or leaders wouldn't have access to the money that is currently being held in the U.S.?
The U.S. has said that it really wants to target these sanctions at the generals and the military-linked companies and not impose broad-based trade restrictions the way it had in 2003 and 2007. Because over the last 10 years, the Burmese economy has opened up, and people in Myanmar have been able to go to work, and consumer demand has skyrocketed. They don't want to crush that. They don't want to smother this democratization movement. COVID is a big X factor here. Myanmar has had a huge outbreak that it was just getting under control about over the last months, and now its testing regime has collapsed. Nurses across the country are joining in strikes, and nobody's really sure whether or not this is going to leave an opening for COVID to reemerge as a major problem in the country again.